Great. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here today. And yes, G11s are a really neat mechanism. And we got to work on one. So we're going to give you some insights from different things that we learned about the experience. And hopefully that will help inform your G11 proposals and experiences as well. So a little bit about the Aga Khan University. I think everyone here probably knows some about about AKU. It was founded as a community hospital in the 1950s in Nairobi for the East Africa campus, and then the East Africa Medical College was founded in 2004. The focus of the project that we worked on was supporting HIV and AIDS research at the East Africa campus. So here are a few pictures just to get you into what AKU is about if you have not been there. We have a lot of different programs. There's a D43, I believe, working with AKU right now. So in 2017, I went over and I did an initial needs assessment week at AKU. So I met with people all over the university. We did process mapping to see what different things were happening because ultimately they wanted to be able to apply for U.S. government funding and be direct funded instead of working through U.S. institutions as a subrecipient. I also presented trainings throughout the week because I was there thanks to their discretionary funds. And they didn't have a G11 yet. They didn't know if they were going to get a G11. So my time there was identifying different systems and processes, but also giving every kind of training that I could think of for this is what you absolutely need to do to apply for and manage US funding on the ground. And if you don't get the G11, this is the bare minimum of what you need to know so that you can have a successful proposal and grant life cycle. Um, so one of the things we looked at, why did we want to use a G11? And I think I should go forward and talk about a little bit what the G11 mechanism is. So the G11 is one of the funding mechanisms through the U.S. National Institutes of Health. And they define the purpose of the G11 as providing institutions with the training mechanisms that they need so that they can establish or enhance an office of sponsored programs or office of sponsored research to put together their research infrastructure. So going back, why did we choose to implement a G11 at Aga Khan University? It's a relatively new medical college. The medical college itself was founded in the early 2000s, and they wanted to develop a world-class academic research program. And it's important to remember again, this was founded as a community hospital in the 1950s. And so the different systems for human resources, for purchasing, for funds management, and legal compliance, they were all set up to support a community hospital, not an academic research center. So trying to fit something like an NIH award into that paradigm wasn't working as effectively as it could. So we were hoping that by doing a G11, we would be able to put together the different systems. There were processes in place for routing proposals and accepting proposals, but there wasn't a lot of understanding about why things were necessary and how to most effectively leverage the different systems that they did have. So we were hoping that with using a G11 mechanism, we would be able to put together some really solid processes for sending in proposals, managing them, and having a good grants life cycle and being competitive for those awards. And also, why did AKU want to partner with the University of Washington for this? Honestly, AKU and any other organization out in the world could look at a lot of different universities and organizations in the US. A big part of the reason the University of Washington was selected was because of the existing partnerships and collaborations that had been ongoing. Dr. Michael Chung, it was in Nairobi at the time, working at AKU, and so he had the UW connection, and that's how he identified me as a person to be involved in the project as well. Also, our Department of Global Health has a lot of experience with building up research administration capacity with different partners we've worked with throughout the world. So we had a lot of experience and training resources that we could already just have ready to go for this project. And the University of Washington itself has a really great research infrastructure. We have our Office of Sponsored Programs, grant and contract accounting, and so many other teams that have resources that would be something that AKU could look at and draw on. So, a little bit about the actual project after it was funded. Just highlighting a few things here. These are some photos of people working on different case study exercises at one of the trainings that we had in Nairobi. Um, this is another group from one of our trainings at AKU in Nairobi. And this is our cohort of 3 people who were able to come to the University of Washington for a week-long training in 2019. And it happened to snow that week, which was a fun surprise for all of us. They got to buy all kinds of warm, husky merch for that week. Okay, so our project as it was funded was called the Infrastructure Development Training Program for the Aga Khan University in East Africa. We ended up having a 3-year award plus a no-cost extension. And our original scope was to conduct 7 workshops in Kenya, to mentor 12 research administrators, to bring 10 trainees to Seattle to do things at the University of Washington, and to provide AKU personnel with access to different online training courses that the UW has. So some of the initial challenges that we faced, because we had a limited amount of funding, so we had to do a lot of training online, and this is before COVID. So we already had to know to plan for a time difference for all of us, for people being on the West Coast of the US and people being in Kenya. So making sure that we found a time that was good for everyone, especially because a lot of our colleagues in Kenya didn't have internet at home. So they needed to be at the office for meetings. So we wanted to try to schedule things to start no later than 4 or 5 in the afternoon there. Another challenge was that everyone was busy. Of course, these are people doing research administration activities across their organization. They are very busy, and getting buy-in from everyone to show that this was valuable, and even though everyone was busy and this was very worthy of their time, was a challenge. Finding different subject matter experts, especially in Nairobi, was a bit of a challenge at first. And it was also a challenge to get local partners involved. Keeping mentees, participants engaged was a bit of a challenge because, everyone is busy, and getting their supervisors to agree that, taking 2 hours here or 2 hours there to do these activities was a good use of their time, especially for an ongoing thing, was a challenge. And we also needed to figure out what worked, just basically through trial and error. When what we planned didn't work, we would try something else. So I'm going to go on to Ellen, so Ellen can talk about what we tried.
Yeah. So I'll start out, I'll kind of back up to something Anne's already covered. She talked about her initial assessment, which gave us a lot of important data to work with in terms of where AKU was at that time, and set up initial trainings addressing some very explicit aspects of kind of proposal development and looking at proposals. But we also, our first group sessions there, we were trying to bring together people from across the enterprise who would be involved, who were or would be involved in research administration at AKU. And during that process, kicked off capstone projects based on low-hanging fruit that the participants identified. So what we tried and what we continued to offer during the essentially 4-year project were in-person, intensive, longer workshops, again, in person, some lean training, process improvement type training, research specific topics, panel discussions, one-on-one mentorships, these capstone projects that were based on elements within individuals' control that they could research and bring people together to problem solve about. Ask an expert sessions, peer networking, and what the original focus was really intended to be more in person, of course. We were traveling to Nairobi. We had started identifying more people who would be coming to the University of Washington in Seattle to meet with people at different levels of our research administration enterprise and grants enterprise, and had to pivot pretty quickly when COVID hit. So we really focused from the beginning on capstone projects that individuals could take charge of on their own or in small groups. The research administration trainings, the subject specific, and pivoted to more of these Zoom trainings where we could offer them to large groups of people so that more than the original participants could learn from experiences that we've been through at the UW. So training sessions, as Anne said, the original target was, I think, 7 workshops. But these trainings included grant and award life cycle, realistic budget development, federal regulations. I won't read through the whole list, but so in addition to Anne and I, we brought in a host of subject matter experts at the University of Washington who offered primarily Zoom trainings, but our compliance director did travel to AKU just before COVID hit, with me, and was able to go over these again. And these were things we reiterated in multiple formats so that we could give people an initial introduction to them and dig into questions and how to apply knowledge within the framework of the structure at AKU and do problem solving at AKU. The capstone project was really about helping individuals develop and consolidate their skills. It was also about empowering them to dig into pain points and issues and research them and figure out why things were the way they were and suggest changes that could be made that would improve things. And sorry, Anne. And share best practices with their colleagues. So it was about individual development. It was about bringing people together to work on issues, and then sharing lessons learned and make suggested changes. Some of the as we conducted trainings, we also solicited feedback. So we would, every time we had a training, we would request feedback. And some of it would be just a simple, like 4 or 6 point scale. How are we doing in this area? And then would ask for any information they wanted to give us. And what we kept coming back to is that some of the lean tools for process improvement were presenting some new concepts and were very helpful in terms of identifying the root cause of problems they were running up against, or obstacles that they were facing in their work. So between bringing people together to talk and giving these tools, kind of presenting these tools, it was very helpful to them. So here are those lean tools that we talked about: brainstorming, root cause analysis, mirror diagrams, affinity diagrams, swim lane diagrams, and current state versus future state diagrams. So we have used these tools ourselves. We're not expert trainers in these tools, but these were very effective in terms of identifying root causes and identifying what processes actually were, kind of the reality versus the ideal. Oh, it looks like I skipped ahead. So all of the information that was presented, and the trainers from across the University of Washington that we were able to bring to AKU were helpful and effective. But again, getting people in the same room and talking and creating that space where people could talk about processes, what processes looked like for everybody involved, really helped identify things where handoffs were unclear, where somebody in one part of the process thought something was happening in another area, and the person in that area thought that something was still needed from this area. So there were kind of gaps and assumptions and just unclear gray areas that were identified by bringing everybody together to talk through what their experience was and what needed to happen. And again, the continuous engagement and mentorship, and bringing case studies so that they could see the theoretical applied in specific situations, which can really help enlighten what it means, kind of the subtleties of something. Providing that depth with case studies. And this was something that the UW's former compliance director, who has since retired, something that she was really able to help with was in bringing up case studies from her experience about questions people had and issues that came up when there were unrecognized compliance issues. So it gave people a structure for thinking through the aspects of US federal compliance that were important, that would be hard to recognize if you haven't experienced that before. Providing multiple content subject matter experts that would talk about similar or related things and tie them together. And as we went through this process in bringing people together, in talking to individuals, and especially did a lot of one-on-one mentorship in talking through specific questions and issues, that helped us. It helped us identify where gaps were and what some bigger needs were, and develop recommendations for leadership, including bringing in an outside consultant that could be there in person and really dig in more as an external person, an external expert to develop recommendations. And again, I can't say this enough, getting everyone in the same room talking was very, very effective. So next slide. Oh, there's a lot of power in bringing people together to talk about what they do, how they do it, pain points, and potential solutions. And people who are working hard to do their jobs, they know what their pain points are, and bringing everyone together to talk about those pain points can help others troubleshoot how they can do things differently that would help somebody in another part of that process. And it was a beautiful thing to see, and it was very effective in terms of problem solving pain points that existed that had seemed kind of intractable. So while the G11 project established mentor-mentee relationships between the University of Washington and Aga Khan University partners, we all had both lessons to learn and lessons to share. And capacity building is a collaborative process. Recognizing the importance of personal connection, it's a reward both for the project and for individuals who are doing the work. It helps to see exciting research with fresh eyes and understanding the challenges involved for everybody, because everybody's doing their best and addressing challenges. If we're doing them together rather than individually, it both deepens our work relationships, maybe deepens personal relationships, and really enriches all of the work that we're doing together. So the unexpected. When I came into this project, I had traveled a fair bit internationally, but I had not worked closely with an international partner. I was not in the Department of Global Health at the time. I had co-facilitated a peer network at the University of Washington and have been involved in bringing trainings to my peers at the University of Washington, but I was not a teacher. I did not come into it as a skilled and experienced instructor. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight here is something I learned early on in our first training at AKU. I was talking about faculty effort certifications. We were talking with the group, and there was not a lot of feedback. There was not a lot of give and take about it. So my assumption in that moment was, oh, everybody understands faculty effort and what that means, and I'm just going over information they already know. So instead of digging into it a little bit more, I let it drop at that point. And then I realized, after talking to Anne and talking to some individuals, because they're a hospital, they're hospital based, they haven't had to track personnel effort. So it's a completely new concept to them, and their silence about it is because they didn't know what I was saying. They didn't know what we were talking about. That was a very important lesson to me, to not make assumptions, to ask more questions, and to really think about what the really truly new concepts for them were and how to contextualize it. Another surprise was records management turned out to be a very hot topic, because in records management at the University of Washington, there's an understanding that everybody plays a role, and it's the importance of records management to meeting compliance regulations, US federal compliance regulations, and maintaining documentation. It was a given, and people found it very interesting to use that as a framework for how they looked at the overall process and all of the records that are generated from proposal through a grant lifetime. So that proved to be to have a lot of interest for people, and to help them put pieces together. And the role of process improvement tools in bringing people together. I have found process improvement tools helpful and effective working with groups of people. And I had no idea coming into the G11 how helpful they would be in this context, in the capacity building. So both in terms of interest, but also just in terms of getting people talking. They really helped people break down some barriers to talking through processes, issues, and pain points. When people are working on a part of the process and they don't necessarily have relationships with everybody in all those research processes, the research administration processes, they don't necessarily have the opportunity to develop personal connections and get that comfort level, that personal comfort, that they can talk through pain points and issues that they run into. So bringing people together, using lean tools to help them talk through processes and pain points in a way that was at a distance. It wasn't personal. It was about a process. Really proved to be effective in breaking down some barriers and giving people a space to talk through issues. So here, this is a picture of the last session held in Nairobi before COVID hit, and you can see that our group grew quite a bit. So our target was, 7 workshops and a handful of trainees, I think 12 trainees. And we ended up, and this isn't even everybody, we ended up being able to bring together and provide some trainings to a much larger group of people than we ever could have imagined. So it was gratifying all along the way. They were wonderful people to work with. And the pivot to COVID happens next. So COVID hits. We were supposed to go back. I think we have at least a couple of trips planned where we were bringing content to Nairobi.
I was supposed to go back in March of 2020.
Yeah. And then I was scheduled for August in 2020.
Mhm.
And I don't think those were our last trips. I'm not sure if was more planned, but we had plans to bring people to the University of Washington.
Mhm.
And did you want to take over from here, Anne, or shall I?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. So the photo that you see of our wonderful meeting in Nairobi in January 2020 was the last one, and the last one in person. So one of the things that we loved about what we were accomplishing with our work with our team at AKU was that people were working across departments, and we were really breaking down silos. In the in-person meetings, people who had only seen names of their colleagues were actually working together, sitting literally at the same table to get things accomplished. And understandably for everyone, working remotely pushed people back into their silos. Some people had to pivot to being in hospital support capacities again, and one of the things that happened was that Michael Chung had to evacuate. He and his family had to return to the U.S. Um, and just everyone had to prioritize their COVID response and taking care of themselves and their family. There were curfews in Kenya, which limited the amount of time if people were able to come into the office. They couldn't stay late to participate in Zoom calls. And like everyone, we had Zoom fatigue issues. Who wants to be on yet another call at the end of the day? Um, One of the things that came up, of course, if people were working from home, they may or may not have good internet access at home to support Zoom. And some people, like I was saying, had to focus on doing hospital support as part of the COVID response. Also understandably, the leadership that had been supportive, some people continued to be supportive, but in the midst of all of this, people lost momentum. People didn't see the value in it, and that's understandable. We all went through this huge pandemic, and something like going to a training on how to do records management. Where do you put it in the scope of all of that? So that was a consideration for everyone. So we had to pivot like everyone did. We had lots of in-person trainings scheduled. We had cohorts of people who were supposed to come to Seattle in 2020 and 2021. And at first we were thinking, like everyone else, we thought, well, this will just be a few weeks, and we'll get everybody to come in the summer or the fall, and maybe next year. Uh, but we realized that since we had no idea when we were going to be able to have people traveling again, we needed to figure out how to continue to provide some kind of training and some kind of continuation for the program. So we put together a Zoom series, but we wanted to make sure it had content that was really relevant and meaningful to our participants, especially in light of all the challenges that we've outlined. And we were also wanting to expand access to include anyone who was able to participate via Zoom, because we didn't have the constraints of fitting everyone into a meeting room around a conference table. So we were able to invite people who participated in research administration activities who maybe hadn't been included before. We also wanted to be able to continue the dialogue that we had started. One of the neat things that had happened in Nairobi, and when Elin was there in January of 2020, was a meeting of research administrators from across Nairobi. And so people were able to see their colleagues from different organizations. They started a WhatsApp group, and they were able to continue some of these discussions through the WhatsApp group. We really wanted to look at the situation in a positive light as much as we could, turning lemons into lemonade. So we had a series of online training events with different UW subject matter experts. We had Peter Harris from internal audit. We had someone from records management. We had people from across University of Washington. We had people from grant and contract accounting. And so people were able to ask these wonderful experts who donated their time questions about best practices and different situations they've encountered. And it was really targeted and relevant to what each person's role at the AKU is. Something else that we were able to do that would not have been possible in our original um, plans was to pay for people to attend the Humentum OPEX Africa event. And that's a conference that had been in person in Nairobi in the past. And then in 2020, they moved it to be an online experience. And so people from AKU were able to attend. I think the cost was something like $40 or $50 a person. So it was really manageable for us, instead of paying for airfare and hotel for someone to go to a conference. We were able to fund whoever was wanting to go to attend this and then to present some teach back sessions. And that was something else that we were really keen on was the teach back sessions. In our original plans, whenever mentees would come to Seattle, they would learn from UW experts for the week and then go back and do teach back sessions with their colleagues in Nairobi. So we were really hoping to be able to continue that in some fashion. We were also able to continue our one-on-one check-ins with the people who were doing their capstone projects. So we were able to keep up with their progress, and not as many people continued with the capstones during the pandemic. And as we've talked about, the priorities had to shift. But for the people who wanted to continue, who were able to continue working on their capstones, we continued the check-ins with them regularly. So what did we accomplish in all of this? At the end of the project, we conducted at least 12 days of workshops in Kenya. We did 5 days of workshops at the University of Washington. We did 13 Zoom sessions, and we had an additional talk with faculty members at the Aga Khan University for about 60 faculty about what research administration means for them. And if you remember, our original target was to do 7 trainings. We mentored 32 research administrators, and our original target was mentoring 10. We were only able to bring 3 people to Seattle. Our target was 10, but the pandemic foiled those plans. We were able to get access for Aga Khan University staff to participate in the University of Washington core trainings for research administration. We also had conversations for them with more than 20 UW subject matter experts. And another thing that we did that we didn't highlight in these notes was presentations by faculty members doing research at AKU. So it was important to me for people working on research projects to understand in everyday language what the researchers were doing. Because it makes a huge difference when you know, okay, this doctor is working on preventing deaths from cervical cancer. Someone I know died from cervical cancer, or this person is working on helping to have better outcomes for young babies. Well, we all have young babies in our lives and we all want them to have great outcomes. So it makes a huge difference. One of the things I asked faculty members was, if you were sitting next to somebody on an airplane, how would you explain what you do? Without your wonderful acronyms and scientific language, how do you explain what you do? And so that was the focus of the faculty presentations. Something else that we were able to do, which I thought was the ultimate in the capacity building for this project, was transitioning away from having an award that was based at the UW with the AKU being the subrecipient to having AKU as the prime awardee with NIH, and then giving a subaward to the University of Washington. So that also gave a great learning opportunity for our colleagues at AKU. So here are some more of our achievements. um, we had a research office that began using PeopleSoft. Purchasing and accounting had improvements so that they were able to support what grants needed for their purchases. The HR department made some radical changes so that it could hire people in real time to work on grant-funded activities. We were able to have capstone presentations by some mentees in March of 2021. And we also were able to give a presentation at the National Council of University Research Administrators in 2021. And Nora Matheka, who I think is on this call today, was one of our co-presenters. So here is the little cover from our presentation at NCURA. I wanted to include a little bit about the global partner perspective. And since Nora's on the call
Thank you.
today, Nora, I
And
don't
I
want to
also
put you
want
on
to
the
make sure
spot.
we have time for questions. So
Yes.
are you
Yeah.
guys close to?
Yes, this is
Okay.
close to finished.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Nora, since I think you're still on the call, is there anything you'd like to say about what worked well?
Hi, Anne.
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation. It was I'm glad that I was able to join in. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot I can say happened well. From my perspective, I'll just say maybe one of the things on a personal basis, I learned a lot on how to look at grant calls and to be able to share what a grant call is about to my colleagues. And that's what I have picked up, even for the Center of Excellence. I moved from the Department of Medicine to Center of Excellence. So that was a plus. And the other thing is breaking down of silos. We were able to interact with each other, but of course now that like you've rightly said, when COVID happened, we kind of moved back to our silos. But that was a great thing, which right now we are still working on breaking down those silos. We are not where we want to be, but we're not where we were. So thank you, Anne, as well as Elin and the rest of the team.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. But yes, another thing that was a highlight from what our colleagues in Kenya wanted in the future is having more local research administrators giving the presentations. And I think that's totally fair and wonderful, and it's as it should be, that we should have more people from the local community giving these presentations and trainings. And another huge thing is, like we talked about at the very beginning, having supervisor buy-in, because if your supervisors don't understand how essential this is, then people aren't going to be able to continue to participate fully. And our final recommendations, make sure that you get leadership buy-in, seek out local networks and resources, and make sure that you budget sufficient FTE for what will be needed. I know that's an ongoing problem for all of our projects, is getting enough budget for what we need to do. Get feedback, and remember that no problem is too small, and even if change is just a tiny step at a time, it is change. So that is